Here we go. Today is video number 4, and I would like to talk more in depth about our intuition, which is for me the voice of our true self. Some people would say it's connected to the soul, to the God within, to the higher self. And all we need to know is that is distinctive from the voice of the ego. And so what is the ego? The ego is the voice that ruminate in our mind with which we self-identify ourselves with. And it's coming from conditioning. Conditioning can come from all sources of information around us, either from our parents, our culture, our religion, media, government, friends, etc. And what it creates is that we identify ourselves with it. Either like I am an economist because I study an economy, or I am a refugee from Thailand, or I am a rock climber, or I am a carpenter, etc. And why is it different? It's because everything that we self-identify come from repetition. The same way as when we were a baby, and the first word we learn for most of us is mama. Mama was not inborn in us. It came from hundreds, if not thousands, of repetition from the same word until our premature mind connected the idea that the female figure that was caring for us and the repetition that she was labeled as mama came to her consciousness to label that she is mama. So there's a distinction between me, the baby, and the caregiver mama, and eventually papa and every other words. So reality was not only experience like the eyes of a baby, it came from the beginning of the conceptualization of reality. Same way as this is a glass, a lamp, a face. It's different when we start labeling everything, and there's nothing wrong because we need this labelization coming from language and words to communicate between each other. The same way that we have unit of measurement like centimeter, kilos, and all kind of measurement to be able to share scientific data across languages and verify scientific tests between different scientists. And so it's just a language system, a tool for us to communicate. But the problem comes when we are identifying with our knowledge and we think that what we think is reality, who we identify ourselves with. And so when it happened, and then this identity affect us. So if, I don't know, I'm really good at rock climbing and or dancing or something, and somebody tells me that I'm not good, will I feel negatively affected? If somebody says something racist to me because I look Asian, would I feel negatively affected? And it's okay to speak our boundaries, so we're not hanging out with people who are racist, but we shouldn't linger on the emotion that we think other people are labeling ourselves with. And what it means is that if we allow the people to label us and to affect our self-worth, then we can drag this emotion much longer than it's necessarily, instead of just distancing ourselves from people who are negatively not connected to who we are. A person might just insult us and then we're never going to see them again. But if we carry this emotion, and because it's affecting our self-worth, is because we're identified with the label they're giving us. And this is where suffering comes from. Suffering is coming from the inability of not identifying ourselves with something that is not real. And so and so for myself in my journey, I got injured 7 times in 2011, 2012, like I said. And I used to identify myself with being a rock climber, a carpenter, at least back in those years. And when it was not somebody who insulted me, but it was a reality who took a piece of my identity, because I couldn't, at the time, I couldn't walk, or I couldn't climb, and I couldn't work. So reality took what I identify myself with, and I suffer. So either somebody is insulting us, or reality, just like if you're with a partner and then something happened to your partner, or they break up with you, or they die, it's okay to mourn and to feel pain, but we're suffering because we're lingering to the idea of what is not existing anymore. So it's the same way is if I identify myself as a climber, and for any reason I get my finger chopped at work from building a house, and they're not able to attach it, and I'm not able to rock climb anymore as good as I used to be able. So I'm losing a part of my identity. So it will hurt if I touch the tip of my finger when it's severe. If it's cut up, it's gonna hurt maybe for a few months, and eventually it's gonna heal. And then I will touch the knuckle, and it's not gonna hurt anymore. So the finger is not there anymore, but it won't hurt because the nerve will have healed. But we suffer because we are not able to overcome the identity that we have lost from a pain that we have overcome. So it means that if I'm not able to think that I'm something without what I think I used to be, saying that for me, a finger, it's really important to identify myself as a good rock climber, then I'll keep suffering. So suffering happened because we're not able to let go of an identity that never belonged to us anymore, or that we're not able to transform ourselves based on the new reality we have to face. Either we're losing our job, we're losing our partner, we're losing a finger. We're suffering because we are attached to an identity that we cannot impersonate anymore. And so the spiritual process of finding the true self, the first part is to be able to always learn or absorb or gain those identity and them letting go. In the spiritual, this is what I feel happened when I was in the alternative phase. So from living in the city and identifying myself as an economist, because that's how I graduated school, or as a government public servant, because that's what was my job. And eventually I let go of that because I wasn't happy. But I discovered rock climbing, and I was not really good at the beginning. And I didn't know, the first job I had was around construction, and I was not really good either. So my self-worth and my self-identity toward rock climbing and carpentry was really weak. So I didn't identify as a rock climber yet, compared to all my friends who were a lot more advanced in either the trade of carpentry or toward rock climbing. And after a few years, because I got better, more confident, then naturally this ego identity came to become my new identity. And I was more happy because it feels more me. But again, when I started getting injured, reality took away a part of what I was happy to identify myself. When I used to identify myself as an economist and a civil servant, I didn't care to lose it, because although I was good and people liked to label me as such, it didn't never felt right. But I was really proud and happy to belong to the climbing community and to be a skilled carpenter. And so when reality took it away from me, it was a lot more painful and hard for me to let it go. And but at the same time, a part of me wanted to cling on that identity. So every time I had an injury, I was just trying to be patient, trying to be positive, and then I would recover a little bit, and then another injury would kick me back down the healing path, and it was hard to for me to keep the spirit high. And in the third injury, where I blew a ligament in my knee, and I was a lot more handicapped and feeling further away from being able to regain that dear identity that I was cherishing, that's when I break down for a day. And then I think I shared about it in the first video, that I received a email from an old friend, not even a good friend, but just an old friend. Back then it was early 2000, about 2011. I received an email from an old climbing friend, and in fewer words, it was an email about him finding his path, because something like me negative happened, and he shifted his life, and I took it as a sign for me to look deeper into myself, to see that maybe there was something more to accomplish with my life than just being obsessed with rock climbing. And this is the shift that happened when the door opened itself to walk the path of spirituality. And that's how I started being part of a group of meditation, of Reiki energy healing, of eventually yoga, and etc. And so all this esoteric world didn't really I had no attraction to it before. I had no opening, and it's only when a part of my identity was shattered, that, and I had no hope to come back to that old identity, that I opened myself to this new identity, this new reality, this new knowledge. And then really quickly, for the following 7.5 years, from, I mean, I would say on the path from 2011, and I started meditating in 2012 all the way to mid 2019. I shifted myself to be obsessed with the spiritual journey, and I would just practice, have a spiritual practice every morning, 8 hour a day for most of those 7.5 years. And by practice, I mean I was doing Tai Chi, Qigong, meditation, yoga, pranayama, etc. And that didn't include the physical training that I would do an hour after that. And for the rest of the day, I was only reading, writing, and following teachers. I didn't work, and I didn't socialize in a way that was not correlated to spirituality 99% of the time. And so either I isolated myself, either alone in my bubble, or I was living in ashram in India, where everyone was in different degree, was on the same journey like me. And so I never had moderation in my life, either at work or either working with myself or in rock climbing. I only have 100% or zero mode. I have a hard time to find or to be balanced in many different things. I just find something and I feel so passionate. There's so much fire that I throw myself into it, and it literally absorbs me. And at the end, all this change itself. And what I mean by change itself is that I change identity. Before, like I said, I was an economist and a civil servant, and eventually I lost myself, and I find myself more aligned with myself, and then I identify myself as a rock climber, as a carpenter, and eventually lost that, and eventually I was a spiritual seeker, a yoga practitioner, etc. And then every time that you are shifting, then you're shifting your identity. And it's not, it does appear that having a spiritual identity seems better than having a mainstream identity. But at the end of the day, neither of them are the true self. The true self, it's really the sense of being, the sense of being that exists only within the silence of the mind. And what it means is that naturally the mind will cling on some identity to feel recognized, to feel that we are something. And so either I talk to this camera or I talk with other people, it feels good for the ego that I'm recognized as something. And it's a natural tendency, and there's nothing wrong with it. Either I'm like good at school when I used to be good at school, and eventually good at rock climbing, or people were impressed about what I am able to build, or by the spiritual knowledge. None of it, even if it feels better as we grow, has anything to do with the true self, because the noise that exists, it's a repetition. We repeat in our head a movie or a dialogue that reinforce our identity. And if you have been in a spiritual community or in a conscious community, there's a lot of blaming and shaming toward people who are, they call it the spiritual ego. And for me, there's nothing wrong. The spiritual ego is just a transitional phase, like being a teenager is a transitional phase between being a kid to adulthood. And the only people who are complaining and blaming teenager are children. It's like when you're a kid and you see the one who are getting older, starting smoking cigarette, are doing bad stuff and vandalizing the school or whatever, then you're talking shit to them. And there's the adult that haven't lived through their teenager year, meaning they had to grow too fast, and they're blaming and complaining about the teenagers in a way that is demeaning. And either there's too much pressure or they like from their parents, and then they're experiencing their teenager mistake in adult years, like later in their life. And the parents or the adult that have experienced their own teenagers year, so we swear and we are doing teenager stuff, then we understand that it's just a phase. We might not like it, but we're not against it. We understand it's just a phase. And spiritual ego is happen to most people because it's when you discover the spiritual realm, um, you are a baby first, and so you're absorbing, but eventually if you become good at teaching yoga, if you become good at, I don't know, anything surrounding healing, spiritual healing, and people recognize those quality within yourself, it's natural and automatic that we will self-identify with this new social identity as a healer, as a practitioner, as whatever the spiritual journey brought us to grow from. And but at the end of the day, the spiritual ego is not our true self. And what is this is that everybody's gonna know my code now if you find my tablet. What is it is that it's just noise, and it's okay to have noise as long as we're not identifying ourselves with, which is difficult at the beginning because receiving acknowledgement, like after we've been lost for so long, the beginning of the spiritual journey, everybody feels lost. Everybody feels undefined, and so finding clarity, finding purpose, finding community feels good for the ego. And and but at the same time, it's it's a vicious circle. It's a vicious circle, and it's part of the journey to not cling and to not feel attacked. Because if for any reason people, oh, there's a little ants is going to show us the true self, the path toward the true self. If for any reason we are identifying yourself and we're clinging to that spiritual identity, then we are always vulnerable for suffering if life or other people are attacking that identity. I don't know, if you're a yoga teacher and you get injured and you cannot teach, or if you are getting caught by abusing your power as a tantric teacher. There's so many things that can go negatively wrong and attack the identity. I'm not saying that there's so many different paths toward self-awakening, toward knowing the self, toward peeling off all the false identity, and there's wrong way to get there. There's wrong way because they are I think from what I perceive is that it's easier for people in the spiritual journey to let go just a certain amount of layers, the one that doesn't suit us anymore, and to add new layers. So we're never going all the way to find the true self. It's really difficult to keep peeling and keep peeling. It's at first it's a long journey, but it's a scary journey as well, because we never know when we start how much more we have to go, how much more layers there is. And even today, I feel myself vulnerable and weak in still some aspect. But I am trying to be humble. I'm trying to be open, and and um, and so yeah. I don't know where I'm going with this, but yeah, it's to see having the compass as to not being identified with the new thing. Say for example that this channel is working and I become, I don't know, a good channel and there's millions of subscriber. I'm not 100% sure if I will not feel off balance by the popularity or by the acknowledgement if the material I'm sharing is reaching and impacting positively a lot of people. And it will always be my mission to come back to center and empty my mind. And so there's no problem to have a positive impact on others and have positive feedback from others and to feel that we're doing good in this world. Is just that we need to be we need to be we need to be sure that we are continuing the practice of emptying yourself. And so we are adding layers and they become strong layers when we keep repeating ourselves that we are this or we are that. Either they're negative or positive. So I mean that, oh, I'm a victim, and you repeat that you're a victim, and then it becomes your identity. Or I'm a guru, and I repeat I'm a guru because everybody's repeating. Sorry, I had something in the stove. And somebody is repeating I'm a guru, and then I identify myself as such, and then I lose balance. What is need to be done is that how we remove all of this is through sattvic practice. Sattvic practice is emptying of the mind, is to create space between thoughts. So if before, during mainstream, I repeat myself, I know economy, I know about John Maynard Keynes, I know about Henry Ford's story, I know, and then you understand economy, or I understand rock climbing, and I understand carpentry, and I don't put space between my own thought, then everything that's happening in my mind becomes my understanding of reality. And with spirituality, I understood that it's pushing thought aside. Not that we don't need to forget about thinking. We don't need to not think anymore, but we just need to be able to see between thought. So to create space between the thought, so we are able to see what we are without thinking and without repeating what creates our understanding of reality, what creates our understanding of self, ego self. Without repetition, without dialogue in the mind, then the true self reveal itself. And I want to say an anecdote about that. I started meditating on the first day of my 33rd birthday when I went to the mountain for my first retreat, like I explained in the first video. And in 2019, I just felt that I had enough. I understood everything. And then there's like, I didn't need meditation. I continued to do yoga. I continued to do that practice. And I was able to hold on to siddhis, which they call in Sanskrit mini power. And so really quickly, from 2012, when I went to the mountain, when I came back down, I realized something changed in me. I realized a lot of change happened within myself. I realized that my sleeping time cut in half. So meaning from 8 hour plus, I was only sleeping 4 hour, no alarm clock, nothing, feeling fresh, feeling awake. And at first, I keep trying to stay in bed thinking that it's not good. And eventually waking up, I was going to bed, say at midnight, and waking up at 4 a.m. And then I just start waking up early and starting to write. And that's the first time the first draft of my book came from the time I was the only one at home in my town awake, and I was extremely productive. And so for many years, I slept, for 10 years plus, I slept 4 hours a night, and I was waking up, eyes open, and then out of the bed within 10 seconds. Sometime when I'm sick, sometime when I'm injured, I stay in bed more. But I would say this is less than 3% of the time, if not less. I was also eating a lot less before my meditation retreat. I was eating 4 times a day, if not 5. I used to smoke weed as well, so it didn't help. And then I ended up eating only 1 time a day. And at first as well, I was resisting because I had lost a lot of weight because I was fasting up at the mountain. So when I come back down, I wanted to gain back my weight because my ex-fiance was going to come back from Germany. And then I didn't want her to be scared of me losing weight so much. And I tried to eat more and I fell ill. So I just decided to eat less. And also, so sleep less, eat less, and sexuality as well. I didn't feel I needed to ejaculate so much. And I think for at least 8-10 years, even until today, I allow myself to ejaculate less than once a month. And usually, even for a long time, it was between 1 to 6 times a year. It's a path, and all what it is that all those things are correlated to energy, and this energy we are consuming more from food. Like calorie is what we believe we gain from food, is a source of energy, and if we are wasting a lot of that energy through sexuality, to digestion, to thinking, overthinking as well. And then we need more energy to absorb. It's easy for people to understand that like working out, lifting weight, use energy, but we don't perceive that overthinking nonstop consume a lot of energy. But if we're leaving our computer or phone open, it's consuming the battery, and then we understand that. But we don't understand that overthinking burns calorie on its own, like literally. And so meditation and all the sattvic practice allow my body and my mind to be a lot more efficient and to be able to live on a lot less sleep and calorie from food than I used to when I didn't meditate. And where I was going with this is that in 2019, when I felt that I was kind of finished, I continued some because my practice was 8 hour and I was really unfunctional to socialize or to do anything or to work. And and then I thought I had to take a choice. And so I stopped many of my spiritual practice, including Qigong, pranayam, Tai Chi, and meditation. And I think I cut my morning practice by half. And I kept most of my CDs, Mini Power, for a few more years, and their benefits start declining slow enough for me to not notice at first. And by the time I noticed that I was not as in spiritual shape for some reason, I I tried to gain them back, but I didn't know it was because I stopped meditating, and so it kind of dissipate from my life, meaning that I woke up more sluggish. I needed a bit more food, etc., and I didn't feel as sharp in my energy. And I just accepted it. I wasn't. It didn't click to me that maybe it was because I stopped doing something that I should have continued. And I think 2 years ago, I went to Mexico. Usually I live in Thailand, so I went to Mexico right after COVID. And then I ended up, without going in a long story, I ended up in a meditation retreat for 10 days throughout New Year's. And it's not something I wanted to do. I just got injured again. After my life got better, I got injured again. And then it's somebody who told me, like, it was a small girl, but I felt that she spoke from higher consciousness, like a message from higher self. And she told me, she didn't tell me, I'm going there, you should come. She didn't tell me, you should do that. She told me, you have to go. And I felt it was out of character. I only knew her for like less than an hour. And by sharing my story, she gave me this imperative order. And I felt that it came from my higher self in some ways. And so I went to surrender, and it just happened that the meditation, it's not a temple, but it's the teacher and the teaching they were sharing was in fact the teaching I was studying for many years in India. And I didn't know. I knew about the school, but I didn't know they were teaching the same teaching, which is Advaita Vedanta, for the one interested, non-duality. And when I started meditating, first day, clarity came right away. And what I understood by whether it was the first insight was that the same way as I go to the gym every day, and say you're overweight and then you want to lose weight, you want to get in shape, you go to the gym, and if you reach your optimal health, you don't say, oh, I have reached my optimal health, I don't need to go to the gym anymore. But that's what I did with meditation. So I cleaned my mind for like 7-8 years. And then I thought, it's like, oh, my mind is clean in 2019. I don't need to meditate anymore. And I didn't realize that meditation was the same thing for my mind than the gym it is for my body. And so slowly, I started gaining weight in my head again. And I started becoming psychologically obese without noticing it. And since then, now it's been over 2 years, I assume, I've been nonstop meditating at least morning and every time from the time from one time in the 20-30 minutes when I wake up, and the same before going bed. And and I will never give up again, because I understood that in the few years, 2019 to take to, so for 4 years I didn't meditate, and it went this way. It went downhill in a really subtle way, but in the ways that make me feel unbalanced, ungrounded, unhappy, depressed, and yeah. And yeah, I'm not 100% sure of all the science behind it, but it definitely has had an impact. And like I shared in other video, I say that we need to focus on losing psychological weight through sattvic practice. And I still practice yoga, but not with the same intention that I used to when I lived in India. Maybe some people would call it more stretching, and maybe that's why I got off, because the intention wasn't the same, because yoga is not stretching. So I do care about my body, but I didn't pay attention to sustaining my psychological weight somehow. And I think it has a lot to do with making sure that I'm not in my head too much. So instead, what happened in the 4 years, 2019, I started building my house. I had the opportunity to build my first house in Thailand, where I lived, and I finished literally in March 2020, just before COVID started. And that saved me, because I ran out of my saving and everything. And my mom financed a house. She wanted me to build a house for her for retirement. And then she couldn't come because the border closed up. And then it was a perfect oasis for me. But because I was so used to synchronicity during my spiritual journey, I just assumed that, and that the house came also as part of the synchronicity. I ran out of money, didn't want to go back to Canada to work, but then the opportunity to build this house, to have a free rent, and then she canceled her flight because of COVID, and so I was able to rent a house, and it was just enough money for me to pay for food and gas and basic stuff. And so life kind of took care of me after my spiritual journey. And I just kind of idled my life and trusting that I had nothing to do, and synchronicity would keep providing what I need. But I felt an emptiness. And I was just trying to be patient. And nothing happened. And I restarted getting injured as well. Worse than 2011, 2012. I injured my knee, and for 3 years I couldn't walk more than 100 meters per day. And so again, when COVID, at the end of the first lockdown, COVID, I already stopped climbing for 5 years, and I was in a spiritual journey. And after the spiritual journey in 2019, where I felt that I didn't need to be a seeker anymore, I built a house. COVID happened, and at the end of the first lockdown, I discovered dancing, and so dancing became my new identity. And somehow, I was already past 40, and I discovered dancing, and I became really good, really quickly. And so it felt even better than the identity I had around climbing. And but it lasted barely a year and a half, and then I got injured, and I felt sad because every shift usually lasted 7 years. So I was a solid rock climber. I was a rock climber for many more years, but totally dedicated 100% of my time for 7+ years, and then yoga for 7+ years. And I would have enjoyed being a dancer for at least 7 years. but I was injured most of the time, and so it was a difficult time, like probably more difficult than my life in the city, because I was stuck at home, and I feel a lot had to do with first binging on the phone. I That was about the time when I got my first phone, and quickly I become addicted to it, and also that I let go of the spiritual aspect of my practice. So I was still doing yoga, but more for the body than emptying my mind, and yeah, and so I lost my true self. I lost my authenticity, and it's only recently that I'm feeling back. I mean, it's been a long journey. I'm not as um, punctual, or I'm not as self-absorbed into the spiritual practice like I was, and now I'm trying to reintegrate a life of balance toward trying to find a new way to make an income, but in a way that feel aligned and feel that I'm giving back to the community, and also trying to continue the practice so I'm not identifying myself with ego reality. That so it's okay for me to impersonate a character, like it's okay for us to impersonate ourselves in every type of character, but just not to lose ourselves in the character. Everything is impermanent. Everything is a movie, and so we have to know that we're just the actor and not the character of the movie. And so into meditation, into emptiness, I know I'm just the actor, but into my thought, into the repetition of the dialogue that happened in my head, there's a belief that I am the character. And so Romeo died at the end, but he only suffers because if you think you're Romeo, but at the end, if you know within yourself you're the actor, then when the curtain drop, then you know if it's just a movie. If Of course, if I have a car accident, it will be a shitty movie. If I poison myself, it's a shitty movie. If my partner broke up with me, it's a painful part of the movie. And it's okay to experience emotion as a human. But as we come back into meditation, into emptiness, then oh, it's not that there is no pain, but it's just peace. And it's in this peace that we know who we truly are. I have no idea if anything of what I just shared made sense. I blab, I know script. I use this as a starting point and it went sideways. But I hope you find value into it. And I hope I brought some insight. And if you do, then make sure you subscribe, comment if you feel it resonates something within yourself. And I'll see you tomorrow in the next video. Thank you.